Hey guys, you're welcome back to my channel today. Thank you so much for stopping by. In this video, I'll be cutting and sewing this bustier top with a stylish neckline and queen and yoke. So if you're interested, keep on watching and let's get started. I'll start by drafting on my pattern paper and I'll go ahead and start taking my points. The first point is the distance from my shoulder to my bust point, which is 10 inches. The next point is the distance from my shoulder to my under bust point, which is 13 inches. The next point is the distance from my shoulder to my waist point, which is 16 inches. And the last point is the length of my blouse, which is going to be 21 inches. That is plus my hemming allowance. After doing that, I'll go ahead and rule straight lines across all these points. So after ruling straight lines across the points, you can go ahead and label the lines. The next thing I'll do is to take half of my shoulder measurement on this shoulder line. I'll indicate the measurement with a dot. On that dot, I'll go down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope and I'll slant from there into the neckline area. The next thing I'll do is to take my armhole depth. I came down from the shoulder slope by 8 inches, which is my round armhole circumference divided by 2. Another way to get your armhole depth is to divide your bust circumference by 6 and then add 1.5 inches to that measurement. So I went ahead to rule a straight line across that point. So the 8 inches is my chest line. And then I made sure that I add the same measurement that I have on the shoulder line on that line. After doing that, I connected the dot on the shoulder slope and the dot on the chest line into a straight line. The next thing I did was to divide the straight line into two. Half of the straight line is 4 inches. I marked 4 inches. On that 4 inches mark, I came inward by half an inch. I indicated the half an inch with a dot. On the chest line, I placed my bust circumference divided by 4. I also indicated that with a dot. After doing that, I connected from the shoulder slope to the half an inch that I came inward with and from there to the dot that I have on the chest line. The next thing I'm doing is taking half of my nipple to nipple measurement, which is 4 inches. I took the same measurements on the blouse length, on the waist length line, on the under bust line and on the bust line, and I connected the 4 dots into a straight line. The next thing I did was to take my neck width of 3 inches and whatever is left on this shoulder area, I'm going to divide it into 2. So from the 3 inches, I placed my tape to the end of the shoulder line and I divided what I have into 2. From that point, I'm going to connect to meet this dart leg as you can see me doing. After doing that, I'll go ahead and take my dart. To do that, I'm going to be taking 1 inch on both sides of the straight line. I'll take 1 inch on the blouse length, on the waist line and on the under bust line. After doing that, I'll connect the 3 dots into a straight line on both sides. So if your bust circumference is more than 38 inches, you can do 1.5 inches on the side front, okay? So after doing that, this is what I have. The next thing I did was to place my tape on the bust line and I came down by half an inch. From that point, I'm going to use the straight part of my roller to connect the center front, and I'll use this side of the roller that is slightly curved to connect the side front. After doing that, this is what I have. The next thing I did was to come down by 7 inches and I'll go ahead and rule a straight line across. So this 7 inches is going to be my new chest line. So it depends on how deep you want the armhole area to be, okay? So for me, 7 inches is fine. The next thing I'm doing is to go up by 3 inches. So you see the shape on the chest line area. That is what I'm trying to create. You have seen my finished look and you can see that the shape was quite high because I used 3 inches. If you want it to be that high, you can do 3 inches. If you don't want it to be high, you can do 2 inches or 2.5 inches. After going up by 3 inches, I connected it back to the armhole area of the 7 inches as you can see. So the next thing I'll do is to tighten my over bust. I'm using half an inch on both sides of the straight line and I'll connect it back to the bust line as you can see me doing. So what you do now is to close up the darts, okay, just to make sure that it's sitting together. After closing it up, I realized that one part of the dart is shorter, so the one that is short, I'm going to increase it to meet up with the one that is long. So just go ahead and blend the darts in case yours is also not the same. Go ahead and just blend everything together as you can see me doing. This is very important because when stitching, if you don't blend your dart together, you realize that once you are done, one dart is going to be longer than the other, okay? So after blending it in, this is what I have. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to create the Queen Anne yoke. To do that, I'll mark my neck width, which is 3 inches. From that 3 inches, I'm going to slant to this other dart, as you can see. So just watch the way I'm placing my ruler. From 3 inches neck width, I'll connect all the way to the second dart like this. Okay, so this is going to be the yoke. So now that I've done that, I'll go ahead and start placing my measurements. I already have my bust circumference divided by 4. I'll go ahead and replace this tiny dart, and I'll add my stitching allowance of 1.5 inches. On the under bust line, I'll place my under bust circumference divided by 4. I'll replace the dart and I'll add my stitching allowance. On the waistline, I'll place my waist circumference divided by 4. I'll replace the dart and I'll add my stitching allowance. On the blouse length, I'll place my hip circumference divided by 4. I'll replace the dart also and I'll add my stitching allowance. After doing that, I'll connect from the bust line to the waist, from there to the blouse length, and that is all. So I'm going to go ahead and cut. So please pay close attention so you know where to cut. After cutting, guys, this is what I have for the front. You can see my yoke, the center front and the side front. We'll go ahead and draft out the back. So for the back, if you want to add zipper to it, go ahead and take your zipper allowance of 1.5 inches or 2 inches. So I'll go ahead and start taking my points. The first point is distance from my shoulder to my bust point, which is 10 inches. The next point is distance from my shoulder to my waist point, which is 16 inches. And the last point is my blouse length, which is 21 inches. I went ahead to rule straight lines across all the points. So after doing that, I went ahead to also take my zipper allowance of 1.5 inches. The next thing I did was to go in by half of my shoulder measurement. On that dot, I came down by 1 inch from my shoulder slope and I slanted from there into the neckline area. The next thing I did was to take my armhole depth, which is 8 inches. So I placed my tape after the shoulder slope and I came down by 8 inches. On that 8 inches, I made sure that I had the same shoulder measurement that I have on the shoulder line, and I connected the 2 dots into a straight line. After doing that, I ruled a straight line across my chest line. Another way to get your chest line is to divide your bust circumference by 6 and then you add 1.5 inches to it. On the chest line, I took my bust circumference divided by 4 and I marked the middle of the straight line. So I connected from the middle of the straight line to the dot that I have on the chest line. After doing that, I took half of my nipple to nipple measurement on the blouse length and on the waistline and on the bust line, and I connected the 3 dots into a straight line. On both sides of the straight line on the waistline, I took half an inch. You can do 0.75 inches. After doing that, I started placing my measurements. I already have my bust circumference divided by 4 on the chest line, so I added my stitching allowance. On the waistline, I placed my waist circumference divided by 4. I replaced that of 1 inch and I added my stitching allowance. On the blouse length, I placed my hip circumference divided by 4 and I added my stitching allowance. After doing that, I connected from the bust line to the waist and from there to the blouse length. The next thing I did was to take my back neckline. For the width, I used 3 inches just like for the front, and for the depth, I used 1.5 inches. The next thing I did was to adjust the zipper area on the waistline. So all I did was to take out half an inch from the waistline and I connected back like this. After doing that, I went ahead to cut, and this is what I have for the back. And what I'll do now is to place my pattern paper on my fabric and I'll go ahead and cut. So I've gone ahead to cut, guys, and this is what I have. So I added half an inch on all the sides that I'll be stitching, the neckline and the bustier area. I also did the same thing for the yoke. I'll go ahead and iron my wadding and hair stay to my fabric. So this is the main fabric. I ironed my wadding to it. So what I'll do now is to go ahead and stitch down. Okay, so remember I added half an inch for my stitching allowance, so I'm going to arrange them like this, right side facing right side. I'll pin all the way to the end. I'll head over to my sewing machine and I'll use the half an inch to just stitch everything down. So this tutorial is mainly for the front. guys, this is my yoke. For the yoke, I added half an inch all the way around it. Okay, so I'm going to remove my pattern paper and I'm going to arrange the yoke. I have 4 pieces here. I'll be arranging them right side facing right side, one for the left hand side and the other one for the right hand side. After pinning, I'll go ahead and sew on all sides. I'll leave the opening on the base and I'll use that part to turn it inside out. After sewing, I'll go ahead and iron it in place. So you are going to cut out your lining piece and you repeat the same process. So after sewing the bustier area, this is what my blouse looks like. I've also gone ahead to iron stay to my lining piece, and I also stitched it the same way I stitched the main fabric. So I'm going to place them right side facing right side, as you can see, and I'll bring in my yoke. After sewing and ironing my yoke in place, this is what I have. So what I'll do is to arrange the yoke in its rightful position, as you can see, and then I'm going to pin it to this side before covering it up with my lining piece. So use your pin to just hold everything down to ensure it does not move. And on this armhole area, before placing the yoke, I made sure that I left about half an inch there, because I'll be using that part to sew the lining and the main fabric, just so it does not affect the yoke. Okay, so after pinning, I'll cover it up with the lining piece and I'll go ahead and sew all the way around. I left a little bit of opening on the side, which I used to turn everything inside out. So after sewing, I went ahead to iron, and this is what I have. I've also gone ahead to sew the back in place. I took in my darts, I fixed my zipper, I also ironed it in place. So this is what the back looks like. So like I said before, this is mainly, the tutorial is mainly for the front. Okay, so what I'll do is to arrange both front and back piece together, right side facing right side, as you can see, and then I'm going to pin the shoulder area together. I'll go ahead and sew the shoulder in place. I'll also arrange the sides and I'll also stitch the sides in place. And yeah guys, after sewing, just go ahead and give your blouse a good press, and that is all for this tutorial. I hope it was helpful. Don't forget to like this video, leave your questions in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.